for Pakistani Ambassador Asad Khan to speak with you about a number of issues by just giving a little bit of a brief introduction and to try to put a little bit of perspective on the events that I think we're going to be talking about, that is the possibilities of cooperation between the United States and Pakistan, and why we believe, I think the ambassador shares with me the belief that we're at a point where there's quite a bit of opportunity, and we're pretty optimistic, I think, about what can happen. Look, 10 years ago, right at this time, I was trying to get a gentleman named Raymond Davis out of jail. It was a huge incident, an American who was accused of shooting Pakistanis. It was one of the low points of American relations with Pakistan, and followed just a few months later by the Osama bin Laden raid. I mean, here was a time when America was focused on counterterrorism. Here was a time when there were enormous misunderstandings between Pakistan and the United States. And, we can say 10 years later, there's a lot less of Pakistan in the newspapers. And I would say certainly that's a good thing, because the kind of attention that Pakistan got in those days and the kind of problems that I was compelled to deal with as ambassador were not the kind of things that build friendship. We weren't playing our strong suits. We weren't working on the things that we're best at, which is Pakistani and American affinity for one another, Pakistan and American economic possibilities. No, it was all basically counterterrorism and those kinds of and the misunderstandings at that time. Now we have a situation where years later, the big concern most people are thinking about are the pandemic and some broader issues having to do with climate change, or whether the trends in world trade having to do with geopolitical changes. And as many people who follow Pakistan see, there's an attempt to have a new approach. And this is the new approach of building a new Pakistan, Imran Khan and the people who work with him, trying to figure out how to come up with a new image, but more a new substance, and to focus on what many call a geo-economic focus in the future. This, as I think Ambassador Khan has said himself, this dovetails neatly with some of the approaches of the new American administration, where it's not simply a question of talking about power in traditional senses and relationships in traditional senses, but to try to see how geo-economically the development in the United States, the development in Pakistan, and indeed the way that they work regionally can work together. So I'm often like to quote the idea that, if war is too important to be left to the generals, in a way, diplomacy is too important to be left to the diplomats. And I think the ambassador will share with me and will share with you some of his ideas that it's not just the people in embassies, even though they're important and key to this effort, but it's other people serving as ambassadors that are going to build this relationship between Pakistan and the United States. Primarily, there's going to be a focus on business people, but not only. There's the idea of unlocking the potential for business and for trade between Pakistan and the United States, focusing less on the military and the intelligence relationship, important as that might be, but focusing more on the ties between firms. I think, for example, I'll mention three examples that come from my experience. One is that, Procter & Gamble in Karachi has been an award-winning organization that is really flexing its wings in not only leading the way in production and in the standards that we expect, but in ESG issues, environmental, social, and other kinds of path-breaking cooperation. They're working with their friends in Karachi and making a big difference. Similarly, there is a startup called MTBC, which has 2,000 Pakistani employees working in high tech and healthcare. These are not the Pakistanis of the traditional economy. This is the traditional economy that one thinks of Pakistan 10, 20 years ago, that was dominated by textiles and dominated by agriculture. No, this is more high-end, taking advantage of the talent that Pakistan has, an American firm working in Rawalpindi. And then I would add one more example. There is the Habib University, the first liberal arts university in Pakistan, which is founded now in Karachi, and which works with American universities to try to expand not only the links of traditional universities, but how are universities going to work in civics and governance in the future? What is going to be the future of education for this incredibly young, incredibly talented country? America is already then wading in knee deep, but we do need to have our attitude change, I think, on both sides. I think there are real flaws in the way that Pakistan is portrayed in the United States, and Pakistan has to earn a new reputation as well. It's not only the new Pakistan, but the new Pakistan that perhaps takes care of some of the democracy deficits that it's had, so that this promise of geo-economic growth really has a possibility. So my first point is that in this introduction, I hope that we can have a good chance to talk with Ambassador Khan about the prospects for this kind of, and my screen has gone blank, but I hope that you can still see me, that the prospects for economic diplomacy are strong. Secondly, I would like to mention one other question that I hope will be addressed, which is whether or not Pakistan can be a leader in the region. Yeah. And, there are, for example, as Shuja Nawaz has mentioned to us, the question of the relationship with China. Is there a way, if America is going to have a relationship with China, which is not only, goes beyond just confrontation, which is probably one of competing, is there a role for other countries in making sure that that communication works well, given the fact that Pakistan is, in a way, the luckiest countries in the world that has the best friends of America and China? Is there a role there to play? Is there a role for Pakistan's neighbor, Iran? That is to say, if America is working with Iran, is Pakistan, which is a friendly country to Iran, can it play a diplomatic role? As Pakistan sorts out its relationship and America sorts out its relationship with Saudi Arabia, is there a way that we can work together? In other words, is there a new possibility for diplomacy and creative diplomacy, both regional and bilateral, that our friends in Pakistan can take? So I will leave this introduction with that, hoping to give a little bit of a little push to my friend Ambassador Khan to deal with these questions of describing the new Pakistan, the possibilities of geo-economic work with Pakistan, and the role of non-traditional business people, whether they are non-traditional diplomats, whether they are business people, university people, even civic leaders. And secondly, the big question whether Pakistan can punch above its weight in diplomacy and engage on issues that are part of the new American agenda, which I think could be to benefit to both countries. So once again, let me finish this introduction by simply saying thank you to the Atlantic Council for this opportunity. I'm delighted to be a part of the Atlantic Council family, to take part in this kind of talk and ones in the future, and then turn it over to you to try to see in this discussion how Pakistan and America can develop their relationship. Over to you.
Thank you, Ambassador Munter. Thank you very much for that introduction of the topic. And I think you have clearly set a very high and interesting bar for me. Talking about Pakistan-US relationship, I think it is very important to understand. Talking about the future, it is important to understand what the new and transformed Pakistan is like. A Pakistan that is principally invested in achieving economic security. Pakistan that wishes to harness its geographic potential in the service of promoting its economic interests. Pakistan that sees its hard security as an extension of its economic security, and a Pakistan that is ready to invest in peace and engagement in the region. Being a student of Pakistan-US relationship, I can tell you, and this is something that was said by my boss of one time Mr. Najmuddin Sheikh, former Foreign Secretary, quoting Richard Armitage, who said that somehow, Pakistan and United States always seem to have the relationship always seem to be directed against something. So at one point in time, we were partners and allies against communism. At another point in time, we were partners and allies in fighting Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. And then we were also on the front lines of the fight against terrorism. I think now is the time for us to have a relationship for each other, a relationship for our people, a relationship that serves the interests of the people of Pakistan, that serves the interests of the people of United States, a relationship that is not against anyone, but that is for the people of our two countries. Therefore, we really want to have a standalone relationship, which should not be seen through the prism of any other country, and should not be seen through the prism of any other transaction also. Because I think, and you have also been part of these conversations now for God knows how many years, I mean, we've always kind of seen this in transactional terms. So, but you said something else, I think, which was interesting, that you see that Pakistan is given a lot less attention now than it was in the past, and I was Deputy Chief of Mission, if not when Ray Davis incident happened, but soon after that. And I can tell you that I would wake up every morning, to read at least on a good day, 60 or 70 stories, very, very critical of Pakistan, experiencing the pushback on the Hill also. I think that is something that has certainly changed. While, of course, we still face challenges, but I think the perception and narrative on Pakistan has definitely undergone a change. And I think it is not by default. Pakistan has earned this shift and change, and I think we need to continue to work hard in the public domain in particular. So we would like to have a realistic and mutually beneficial partnership. Now, talking about Pakistan-US relationship, it will be absolutely unrealistic on my part to leave Afghanistan out of the conversation, because frankly, for now, the main conversation track obviously is Afghanistan. And you know that, and we all see it every day, that a lot is being said and written about the peace process. I know I was asked to make quick comments, opening remarks, so I'll really kind of stick myself to the script, and I make very quick 6 points. One, Afghanistan today is a convergence, not a contention between United States and Pakistan. Two, there is no military solution to the Afghan conflict, and I think this is something both countries recognize and realize. Three, that the ongoing Afghan peace process is our best bet in achieving an inclusive end state in Afghanistan. Four, instead of looking back and pushing things from where it all started, I think it is critical to put all our energies behind making the intra-Afghan negotiations successful, without which Afghan peace, frankly, would remain a pipe dream. And clearly, there are two pillars to the peace process. One, of course, was the US-Taliban agreement, and other is the intra-Afghan negotiations piece. Five, peace in Afghanistan is a shared responsibility. To expect only Pakistan to contribute or only United States to do what is required, I think is not fair. I think every country in the region that has a genuine interest in seeing peace in Afghanistan needs to contribute. And last point is that long-term sustainable peace in Afghanistan can never be achieved without helping Afghanistan transition from a war-centered economy to a normal economy. And that is where I think we will be discussing further as we go into our general conversation. But beyond Afghanistan, I think Pakistan has all that a country would need to have a strong and mutually beneficial partnership with the United States. And I describe those elements as enablers for the relationship. You also alluded to that in your opening remarks. I think one of the first enablers is the long history that we have in the relationship. Our relationship started even before Pakistan was created. So we have historically worked for peace, stability, and in our region and beyond. But then we also have human and people connections. I think this is something which is underappreciated in different relationships for us. Be it our military, be it our civil service, every other civil servant or military official is exposed to United States, is trained in this country. We have a large number, and I'm happy to report that after 2001, that's when we touched the highest number of Pakistani students coming to United States for studies. We reached that level, which is 9,000 plus students for the first time last year. So, and we are going to have see more students coming to United States. But I think our strongest linkage is diaspora. I can't think of a family worth any influence in Pakistan that does not have at least one Pakistani American in the family. And that's really a very important enabler for the institution building. Our LUMS, IBA, Shifa International, Agriculture Research Council, Agriculture University. So US has also historically played an important role. Then the economic linkages. US corporate footprint is huge. US for the last 20 years has been one of the top 5 investors in Pakistan. United States is our largest export destination. United States is our 3rd largest remittance provider. So US also, companies, the rate of return is something that is highest. So there is this great scope for harnessing the geographic potential that Pakistan enjoys by virtue of its very, very special location. And thirdly, the shared values, principles, and legal framework. Pakistan is a vibrant, thriving democracy. We are practically an English-speaking country because English is our official language. We follow being a common law country, the property rights, the labor laws, when you land in Islamabad, you get into a familiar territory, which makes it much easier for businesses to operate. So I think that is also a very, very important enabler for the relationship. And last but not least is, of course, our shared interests in promoting peace, security, and stability in the region and beyond, which includes our counterterrorism-related cooperation, which includes our ongoing maritime cooperation. So really looking at these enablers, by any definition, by any measure or yardstick, Pakistan ought to have a strong relationship. I have not even started to speak about our population and why Pakistan should be an important country because of our relationships within the Islamic world, in the region and beyond. So I will just stop here. I wanted to set the stage because you asked me to speak about the future. And I see, frankly, a bright future for our relationship because we have all that it takes to have a strong partnership with the United States.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Khan. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Safiya Wari Ahmed. I'm a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council South Asia Center. I'd like to thank Ambassador Munter, who it's always a pleasure to hear from you. It's always a pleasure to be speaking with you on the same platform. And Ambassador Khan, thank you for those opening remarks. As always, you're a friend to many in DC, and we're lucky to have you as a friend and an ally here in Washington as our ambassador from Pakistan. So I'd like to just jump right into a few questions, and then I'll open it up for broader questions from the audience. But my first question to you, and I don't think it'll come as a surprise to you, Ambassador Khan, is about India-Pakistan relations. As you know, I have family in both India and Pakistan, and there's a deep desire to see peace in the region. You're smiling because you know we've had this conversation before. But I think the relationship has really deteriorated sharply in the past few years, particularly after the Pulwama attacks in 2019. But it was actually great to see on February 25th that Indian and Pakistani military officials issued a statement where they agreed to adhere to a ceasefire along the lines of control. So I think many South Asia watchers were excited to see renewed dialogue after many years, but are still skeptical. So I would love your thoughts. Is this truly a confidence-building measure between the two countries, or can we expect real progress for peace?
Well, thank you very much. Yes, Sophia, I think there's no one better placed to ask this question, and no one who has higher stakes than you
exactly
in being a normal relationship between India and Pakistan. So we see you also as a daughter-in-law for Pakistan. I'm married to a Pakistani American. But really, I think this is an important and I would say a significant development. It is a welcome development. Pakistan has been very clear and consistent. And this really needs to be looked at consistent with what I said in the beginning. I mean, our leadership has been consistent throughout in seeking peace, in seeking a normal relationship, in making the peace of virtues, be it the Kartarpur opening up, be it the release of Abhinandan in the aftermath of the Pulwama attack, So it's really, and what this particular episode brings out very clearly is that blazing guns is no solution. And clearly for us, what was particularly painful was that on both sides of the line of control, it was the Kashmiris who were being killed and injured. And whose properties were being damaged. And Pakistan has, I invite you and encourage you to go back and look at the history of violations across the line of control. And you would clearly see that from 2003 until 2013-14, the violations were in single digit, It was only from 2014 onwards, and Pakistan had repeatedly called for the revival of the LOC ceasefire agreement. So we are glad that that has happened. We are not the ones who escalated. We are not the ones who basically brought things to the point where they are today. And today there is, frankly, enough evidence, not what we say, but what the world is seeing in terms of also how Pulwama episode was used further to escalate the bilateral situation and then to gain political mileage out of it by the BJP government. So, the LOC is literally and figuratively the starting point for India-Pakistan contact, So this is an opening, I would say, important development. We have been committed to peace. We still are committed to peace. But really, since we are not the ones who have brought things to this point, I think the onus is on India to take good faith actions that would demonstrate their interest in maintaining peace and in seeking normalization. And that, unfortunately, would not come about unless what pushed things to this point is not addressed, which is really the unilateral actions that India took in Kashmir.
You didn't mention India, but India was also part of the group there.
Because India has so far not, I think India is the only country that has not so far supported the peace process. And that's something that I think all those genuinely interested in seeing peace in Afghanistan will have to look at more closely.
So let me turn to economic diplomacy. And this is something that I've really thought was fantastic, that the Pakistani government has focused on boosting trade and investment more from a business to business perspective, and has spoken quite a bit about economic diplomacy. And some of the instruments, if you think about economic diplomacy, including those from your neighbor, are, export credits, investment guarantees, tax credits and incentives, amending foreign investment laws to allow for foreign direct investment. Can you share some of the investments that the Pakistani government is putting forward to attract U.S. investors?
I think the government of Pakistan has one of the most liberal and attractive investment regimes in the broader region, and when I have to basically go out and make a case for Pakistan and why people should or countries should consider investing in Pakistan. Pakistan is a country of 220 million people. We have a growing middle class that has hunger and appetite for a range of new products. Our cost of production, our human resource, both in terms of their age bracket, our average age, median age is 23.9 years. Just to give you one reference point, in Japan, it is 46.9 years, So we are almost half of what they have. And we have also given, as I said, incentives in tourism sector, incentives in agriculture sector. Pakistan has, before we became independent countries, the areas that are today part of Pakistan used to produce food and grain for entire United British India, So there is this enormous potential, and countries and companies are already seeing that potential. Kargil has gone back into Pakistan and they have made investments, and we are doing everything to facilitate. Similarly, technology sector is also, we have all those incentives listed on the Board of Investments site, where it clearly outlines, but I think in terms of improving the regulatory environment, Prime Minister is absolutely keen. And then for that reason, he had actually given the target, and we still have not seen the figures for 2021, but we have taken about 300 reforms in 1 year and have been successful in moving from 136 to 108 on the ease of doing business list, So this reflects, we have also lifted restrictions on business visas. US businessmen can actually get visas on arrival in Pakistan. To facilitate visas, we have actually switched to e-visa system, and the limit also for visas has been increased up to 5 years. So we are doing all these measures in terms of facilitating the travel, in terms of creating a better regulatory environment. Thirdly, addressing the challenges and concerns that US companies are facing, and they may vary from company to company. So we are ready. I am personally engaged, and our leadership in Pakistan is also, and we regularly interact with US businesses here to hear them out. Because ideally, we would want them to act as champions for Pakistan.
Ambassador Khan, and I am going to get to questions from the audience, but I have one question on China for you. You knew that was coming. China is by far Pakistan's largest trading partner, accounting for a quarter of all of Pakistan's imports, while the U.S. accounts for only 5% of imports. The U.S. is currently Pakistan's largest export destination, which is mostly for textiles, as you know. And overall, U.S.-Pakistan trade volume is much lower than when you compare it to Pakistan-China. But with the growth of CPEC in Pakistan and China's free trade agreement, Pakistan and China are growing closer at a time when many countries, including the U.S., are viewing China with greater concern. How can Pakistan navigate these two relationships, given its close ties to China and its desire to strengthen its relationship with the U.S.?
Well, that's a challenge that I think diplomatic establishments across the globe, not necessarily in South Asia alone, will have to deal with, and we genuinely believe that, South Asia should be an arena for cooperation rather than confrontation, and then Pakistan has, over the years, over the decades, maintained good relations with both China and United States. And as I said in my opening remarks, that we would not really want to have a relationship against anyone or anything. We would like to have a relationship that serves the best interests of our people and people of United States, and where we can create win-wins, And we genuinely believe that the size of the pie and the potential, economic potential that we have is enough and there is enough space available, which can be co-shared by United States, by China, and other important players, I mean, you asked me about the incentives, in terms of incentives for foreign businesses and US businesses also. First of all, I mean, we hear a lot about Pakistan being open only to China. No, we are not. I can tell you there are 9 special economic zones in Pakistan, where in every single one of those zones, US investors and companies are very welcome to come and invest, and this is being done on an MFN basis. Similarly, so in those special economic zones, obviously, if there are Chinese companies, these are going to be deals that will be concluded between the private sector companies, and they will have to agree to the terms and conditions of the deals and agreements that they sign. But the point is, structurally, there are at least 4 of these special economic zones that are already operational, where there are very clearly laid out tax incentives. There are exemptions being offered, special other incentives have also been given. So United States companies should take part in those investment ventures in Pakistan. And that would create, I think, equities for both countries. I can tell you, Pakistan, you are right. Our free trade agreement with China and our huge deficit, I think, makes out a very strong case for building our exports in the region, including to China. And just to give you one example, in 2019, we imported close to $700 million of cotton and about $350-60 million of soya bean, which was in 2018 close to $1 billion. So this is what we are importing from United States, and that is being used as input in different sectors, which are then re-exporting in the wider region. So I clearly see immense possibilities for agri-processing, for energy companies, to come and invest in Pakistan, not only to take advantage of our huge domestic market, but then also to use Pakistan as a manufacturing hub for the wider region. And for that, CPEC provides that south-north connectivity. And as I have said it before also in DC, that we are also principally open to exploring the west to east connectivity also, only if things start to normalize between India and Pakistan.